I recently uploaded a video on my top 10 city breaks, which I'll put a link into at the end of this, where I talk about some of the most enjoyable and fascinating and engaging cities I've managed to visit across the world. So I thought a companion piece. I'm not sure how to word this, but no, I'm going to say five. I'm going to go for five. Five most disappointing cities, and this is meant in no disrespectful way whatsoever. It was just the experience I had for different reasons. Kind of left me feeling a bit underwhelmed. Now, I will try to be fair and explain with balance why I'm not the keenest on the cities, but I'd like to stress that I did actually have a pretty good time, whether it was on holiday or just a day trip. So it's all good experience at the end of the day. Anyway, so let's start with city number five, and I'm going to go for Los Angeles, California. We went to LA as part of a multi center trip on the West Coast, which was Los Angeles, Las Vegas, and then San Francisco. Now, being a big movie buff and all that kind of stuff, it was one of the places I'd always wanted to go to. And touring around, I can't deny the Hollywood sign and the Walk of Fame, and doing the day trip around Beverly Hills and Rodeo Drive and all those places was really good and enjoyable. But the thing that I found was really tough with LA was firstly it was the sprawl. It's so big, it's so wide, it's so hard to navigate these places. It's quite flat as well in terms of not just in terms of the general building and layout, but also I just didn't get much of a vibe there. It didn't feel like there was much of a kind of a zing to the place, which was quite disappointing, bearing in mind all the misty eyed Hollywood nostalgia that I was clearly pining for. The other problems I found with LA is parts of it are it's very very hit and miss. You know, you go to obviously the fancy parts, Beverly Hills and so on. It's all lovely, massive houses, picket fences, perfect lawns, and then you go to the other places. The obviously Hollywood's a little bit scuzzy. Anywhere sort of around that infamous Skid Row area is just awful. And again, the homelessness, the aggressiveness of some of the beggars. It's not the best. So yeah, unfortunately, I did have a nice time there. Maybe I should give it another go. It was quite a while ago I went, but yeah, I'm afraid Los Angeles is probably one of my least favorite cities in the states that I've visited. Okay, the next city we have is Helsinki. Sorry, my Finnish friends, but I didn't find this to be the most exciting of cities I visited. We did Helsinki in a day. We were staying in Tallinn and got the ferry over. A day was more than enough, probably. We had a wander around. It was pleasant enough round by the harbour side. A couple of nice cathedrals there, one Russian style one, and then there was one sort of carved into a bit of a hill, which was certainly quirky and a bit different. But yeah, I can't say when the highlight is some sort of weird sculpture, giant man, I think having a tinkle. It doesn't really hammer home this is a place to be. So I'm afraid, yeah, Helsinki was nice. It's a good pin in the map, but I wouldn't be rushing back. Certainly not when we went to Stockholm and Copenhagen, which I think have a little bit more going for it than our the Finnish capital. I'm afraid to say. Okay, next up, we're going to go back across the Atlantic, this time to Canada, and it's going to be Ottawa. We went to Montreal, which was a fun little city. We did a nice day trip out to Quebec City. There's a nice stop at Waterfall, and Quebec's lovely, very pretty. We did look at doing an organised day trip to Ottawa. Fortunately, we have some family over in Montreal who very kindly took us to Ottawa for, I say, for a day trip, but we probably were there for less than an hour because aside from the parliamentary buildings and perhaps a odd, funny bit of graffiti about Justin Trudeau, there was very limited entertainment value to be had in Ottawa. I think the organised tour they would have just shown you the buildings for Parliament and just dumped you in a museum or two for the rest of the day. Yeah, so I'm definitely not going to be rushing back to Ottawa, unfortunately. Number two on my list is Brussels. We went to Brussels for my 30th birthday and we had a good time, but really it just doesn't have the same clout as some of those other sort of headline European cities, London, Paris, Rome, Barcelona, that kind of stuff. It's perfectly fine. There's some reasonable sort of squares. The beer's bloody good. The chocolate's good. The pomme frites with mayonnaise is good. But yeah, there's just something when a bit like Helsinki, which is when one of your iconic signs is a little person urinating rather than a big person. In the case of Helsinki, it kind of gives the game away. Kind of is a great analogy for the place, perhaps. That's been a bit mean, but you get my drift. And so we come to the last entry, which is Bangkok, Thailand. Bangkok obviously has a reputation that needs no introduction, and has some great places to visit, no doubt about it. You know, the temple's lovely, the Wat, the Jim Thompson House, the parks there. We saw this massive lizard in the park. So I'm not saying there aren't good fun things to do in Bangkok. I just couldn't get the place. Maybe we were staying in the wrong part of town, but it was very much in your face, the constant tuk harassing, uh, lots of scammers, lots of people sort of in your face. The transport's awful. A bit like LA actually. It's a big sprawl, but trying to get from one side to the other. I mean, you can't walk it. When we went, there was a monorail that kind of just ran to where bloody basically two stations. So you then end up sitting in a car, or a taxi, or a tuk, and everything was just such a drain. It was very draining, very intense city, and yeah, and I obviously had some highlights. You know, we ate grasshoppers for the first time, and I think it's a bit strange. Like, if you go to a city and the best place you find to eat and drink is is a pavement cafe, literally sitting on plastic tables by the side of the road. That kind of gives you an indication that you know, maybe it's not the place that it's all cracked up to be. Okay, anyway, so those are the five most disappointing cities I visited. Not saying I didn't enjoy some of them or parts of all of them, but yeah, just if I had to go back to some places, these probably wouldn't be very high on my radar.